Hello, everybody. I will say now that I'm probably going to pause every now and again because this morning has been fantastic so far, but there's a lot of things that probably I would make reference to that have already been sort of mentioned. So rather than repeating, I might pause every now and again and go off on a tangent, which I am known to do. So first of all, I actually would just like to thank you for inviting me to come along and be part of this amazing inaugural event and also for the launch of the manifesto. I came across the depth of amazing work happening here when I went to the Parliament, when the Stove Network came up and did a launch, and I think it is flying slightly under the radar, and I suppose one of the things I wanted to do was be able to help shout about what is happening in Dumfries and Galloway on so many different levels, which are amazing models of practice. And I think I can't tell you how inspired I am from seeing how things are working, how connected it is, to be in a room today and see the mixture of people who are here from across culture and health, freelancers, participants, performers, communities. We've got Public Health Scotland, council, government. I mean, just to see all of these people in a room having this conversation, I can't underestimate how inspiring it is. And if we could actually scale this up to being a national conversation, we would be so much further ahead than we are right now. So I wanted to recognize that because I'm aware that there's been so much work to get to the point that you're at today, and I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that. It's always sometimes hard to see what you're doing in your own area in the context, yeah, I've been so excited about it. So I'm Nancy Riach. For the last 18 months, I've been working as the development coordinator with Arts, Culture, Health and Wellbeing Scotland. And like many people in this room, it's not what I set out to do. I started working as a stage manager and a community artist and 30 years ago. And my career took a meandering path for me to end up where I am today. And now I mostly focus on development, which for me is about engaging with stakeholders, creating common language so we can actually have conversations, leveraging kind of soft power and understanding shared interests rather than focusing on the differences to create conversations and making change possible. There's an amazing array of work happening across Scotland, from grassroots community engagement to large-scale national organisations and every variation in between. Some are defined in the health and wellbeing space. Some have health and wellbeing impacts, but they're not primarily, that's not the purpose of their delivery. It's one of the reasons that a lot of the work is invisible, because it is very much dependent on where funding comes from, how it's being viewed, how it's being evaluated, whether or not the impact or the evaluation is actually being recorded anywhere. So sometimes it's really hard to show this area of work as a body because it is so convoluted. And one of the prime reasons for that is because the funding pathways are also so convoluted. You could have a youth theatre that's funded through social justice. It's not even on the culture track or the health track, but actually the impacts and the deliveries and the difference it's making to young people's lives are immense. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is trying to bring some of these things together, bring some of the evidence, draw the strings, and be able to sort of present a more cohesive look at what's happening. But we constantly come across, when this area is being spoken about, that we immediately fall into confusion, people having loaded words that people all define differently. There's a lack of awareness of what we do. I always talk about, if you're in a room full of people in the culture sector, we all get it. When you're in a room with other sectors, we then begin to realize how much it's not understood. The power of what we do is not understood, and we have to get better at how we tell our story. It is happening. Most of what I'm going to focus on today is the positive things that are happening, although it is a very challenging landscape, and there are some things going on at a national level which don't necessarily make this easy. But I think one of the things I've found is we're constantly up against asking for evidence, evaluation, trying to understand how the work is measured, how do you know it's good quality, the difficulty of finding funding to make work sustainable. I came across a word that I love, which is pilotitis. We often live in a world where funding is about pilots. You do it, you prove it's brilliant, and then there is nowhere for long-term funding. So we suffer from pilotitis. We suffer from trying to reframe our work to fit the funding agendas when the funding criteria are not suitable for this area of work. You know, are we doing something that's cultural, or are we doing something that's for health, or are we doing something? Actually, we're doing it all. And we have to begin to kind of get that more cohesive. There's also a disjointedness, a kind of siloed approach. And again, this is one of the areas I think is beginning to change. But culture doesn't stand on its own over here, with health and well-being and economy and everything else all. We're embedded and woven through it all. And again, that's one of the inherent difficulties, but at the same time, it's why we are so important. On saying that, I do feel like there's a time for change, and I think there's a willingness. I think one of the biggest differences I've seen recently is a real willingness on all fronts for this to happen. And we've heard that this morning already, right? You know, from CMO's comments, from the change in kind of public health positioning. There is a willingness now to find a way to make this work. So we're kind of getting beyond the point of how do we evidence it? Can we just accept it is good? Now can we get into the conversation about how can we make it happen? How can we make it sustainable? How can we do more? ACHWS came into existence. So ACHWS is Arts, Culture, Health and Wellbeing Scotland, through a number of partners coming together informally and identifying a need for a voice for this space. It's a very early development of a network, but we are already getting huge traction, and we've got a really widespread number of members. I think we're over 1,000 already. So we're just working through exactly what we are. We go on the basis that rather than putting barriers in place, we are open to all those working in arts, culture, health and wellbeing in Scotland, whether that be artists, organisations, healthcare, link workers, anybody in this space. Come and be part of the umbrella, because that's how we create conversation. Our mission is to create a national network, linking together, advocating for and supporting those working at the interface of arts, culture, health and wellbeing in Scotland. And our vision would be that culture is recognised as transformative to health and wellbeing and accessible to everyone. But enough about us, we'll come back to that. Today I'm going to look at some of the policy, strategy and things that are going on. I am going to reference a few things that you've seen, and I'm just going to skip over the detail of it because it's been really well covered by colleagues already. So the WHO review and report was quite a pivotal point back in 1990-2000. There was then another report in 2023, which was the first time there was a longevity. So it was the impact of arts and culture engagement on population health, and it was the first global report across generations. It wasn't specific about arts and health intervention. It was just saying, if in your life you are engaged with culture, it has an impact on your health and well-being. One of the top lines was, it can increase your lifespan by 10 years. I'm simplifying that. It's a great report, but it was one of the first ones which actually gave a sense of across your whole lifetime, which we've never really had that kind of depth to be able to reference. Then there was the Creative Health Review, which again has been referenced. So I sit on the advisory panel for the National Centre for Creative Health, who, along with the UK all-party parliamentary group on arts, health and wellbeing, created a report around the Creative Health Review, which I know you've already heard mentioned, but it highlighted the potential for creative health to help tackle pressing health and social care issues, including health inequalities. And most recently, and I think it was the end of December, beginning of January, was the Frontier Economics Report, which was commissioned by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, which breaks new ground on creating a methodology around monetising the economic impact of health and wellbeing. It's something that is very splits the crowd, but it gave a sense of the benefits of cultural engagement, valuing the improvement in UK adults' health, engaging in culture at just over 8 billion to the economy. So we don't like putting a price on what is delivered. However, facts like that give us something that says this is a really, really fundamental and important area. It's not a nice to have or a light touch fringe that you can choose and gets cut out of the budget. So social prescribing is another area in Scotland right now that is a really hot topic. And I just wanted to also raise the National Academy of Social Prescribing have just published a report for England proposing a new approach with a 1 billion fund over 10 years, bringing together contributions from public, philanthropic, private and public sectors, providing vital long-term funding for community groups and organisations to meet the rising demands for their activities and services. These things are not Scotland specific, but I think there are things in here about learnings, about challenges, it's about what people are doing in different places to tackle some of the potential for change. So I think those are ones I wanted to just raise as go have a look at them. There's some really great stuff in there. All the links are on our website. In Scotland as well, though, I think there's been real positive moves. The Culture Strategy Action Plan focused on the need to build resilience within the sector, and under Transforming Through Culture, it outlined the need to strengthen the cross-Scottish Government joint working, embedding culture across all areas in government, as a cross-portfolio and not a separate area in isolation, which is a key positioning for culture as being relevant to a wide range of areas and not the standalone sector that we're navigating the narrative around. At recent events, the Culture Secretary talked about the understanding of health and well-being delivered through culture and we now need to move to the inevitable conclusion that this kind of success is we need to do more of it. That was his take on it. And in a year where we've seen the biggest uplift in funding increase for culture and the outcome of multi-year funding, we saw organisations getting a significant uplift if they were already funded, and an additional 141 organisations being added to the 3-year multi-fund roster. Within that, it was a huge increase in community-based organisations and a much more spread of geographic locations across Scotland, so a much more balanced spread of the funding. And we were delighted at the number of creative health organisations that are now on that rota. It was a massive change. So we are delighted to see so many members on that list. We're also aware there are those that aren't, and we've still got a battle around where this area of work sits and how we can secure better funding routes. We're working with Creative Scotland just now on a number of areas, including the development of a cultural health strategy and creating clearer pathways, and we're also part of the Creative Scotland review that's happening at the moment. Healing Arts was also mentioned. So Healing Arts was a week-long celebration across Scotland with 376 events and 11,000 people taking part. It was an initiative tied in with Jameel Arts Health Lab and World Health Organization. It was the first time it was a countrywide activity rather than a city activity, and now it's being seen globally as the way forward for healing arts events. So Scotland is in a very unique position at the moment of being seen as the showcase of how this could work on a grander scale. I heard the comment before, and I was going to say, from what I know you do in Dumfries and Galloway, I don't think that, but there is plans for a 2026 event. So it'll be a very different model, but I think there will be Healing Arts Scotland 2026, and I can't tell you how much I would disagree with that statement. One of the other things that's really shifted at the moment around population health and the move from prevention rather than intervention is a huge mind shift with a lot of, on the health side. The Chief Medical Officer, we've already heard, is really supportive of this area of work. And he spoke about the concept of what we mean by health and care, physical and emotional health and preventative measures to improve people's lives, and the important role that arts and culture plays within that. He actually launched his report at the HAS conference in August. The chair of Public Health Scotland has talked about the potential for arts to influence a new concept of healthcare, acknowledging health is not made in doctors' surgeries or hospitals, it's made in our homes, our schools, our work, and our communities. It's about creativity, joy, hope, laughter, but also about identity, connection, and sharing and expressing. I'm quoting them, so so some of the wording, again, will be slightly different. But she highlighted that hospitals are for repairs, but good health is created in entirely other means. And she asked, what might Scotland's health look like if we put as much effort into nurturing good health as we currently put into repairing our current healthcare system? There's a real move at policy level to address the need for change. Why are we looking for change? Well, again, Valerie touched on this. At the moment, Scotland has the lowest life expectancy in Western Europe. Those in less well-off communities at the moment die 10 years earlier than those in better-off communities. And within that, the gap that was spoken about is the healthy life expectancy. So the average number of years that a person can expect to live in full health that's not hampered by disabling illness or injuries is even worse. At the moment, the discrepancy between those two areas in Scotland is now 26 years. So it's not sustainable. We have health is no longer improving. We've got an aging population, and the increased burden on the healthcare service is growing. So we need to find new ways of working. So I think when I was at the event with the chair, she asked, are we a nation that needs to take seriously the creation of good health and prevention of ill health? Yes, we are. Is Scotland's ill health actually preventable? Yes, it is. So we're currently, again, in conversations, the CEO of Public Health Scotland is looking to include creative health in their next strategy, which gives us a hook to begin to build pathways, to begin to work out where can we sit across delivery. At the moment, we've got conversations going on as part of the PLACE framework. We've got conversations going on as part of the green space, NHS green space strategies. So we're trying to find, I suppose my bit of it is on a national level, we're trying to find the hooks, the policies, the strategies where we can embed this area of practice, and then we can begin to work out how we can create the pathways, the funding routes, the system change that's needed for it to cascade down so that it affects all of us being able to do our jobs better, more supported and more visibly. That's, I suppose, the role of the national ACHWS network. And I think the PLACE work ties in really nicely with some of the areas that were in the creative placemaking approach that the Stove Network came up to Edinburgh and launched at the end of last year. Now, I'm only touching on because of time, I'm only touching on a few things here, but I wanted to kind of give an overview that there are things happening, there are shifts, there is change, and on the most senior level across health, across culture, there are conversations, roundtable discussions. There is, I think, a willingness to really try and make things happen. And I think when you've worked in this sector for as long as I have, sometimes we can be a bit, been here, heard it, worn the T-shirt. Let me quote a report that came out 20 years ago that said exactly the same thing. I think we have to keep moving forward with the belief that change is possible. It's not easy. If it was easy, we'd be doing it. And I think that's the thing about change is this is a complex space. It is hard to navigate, and we're working within structures that we don't fit in. So change is going to be painful, and it's going to take a lot of effort. But days like today for me are the reason I think it's possible. We are coming together, we are being creative, we're being focused, we're being brave, we're connecting, gathering people around the table, finding new ways of sharing information, learning how to speak a language we can all understand, and identifying ways of working, remodeling, adding to existing policy, strategies, frameworks, funding models. My life is so exciting. And with those pathways, we're identifying where there are gaps, where we need to create new ways of working. So some of it is about adapting and replacing, and some of it is about creating and adding to. It's not easy to bring people together and navigate the complexity of this work, but I think that we are building towards a better future. I think that what's happening here and what's happening in Dumfries and Galloway is a model of how this can actually work. ACHWS is about the role of artists and artistic practice in health, medicine, social and community context. It's the core of our activity. Our wide reach is driven by the range and diversity of represented across the sector, and we give a voice to individuals, communities and practitioners from society, but we can't do it without the practice that's happening on the ground, without the networks that come together and exist. So we are here to work for you, and me being able to come and hear days like today gives me really clear direction to go away and work out on a national level how we can direct the conversations to deliver what's needed on the ground. So I would encourage you, come and find me. I was going to say it would take me all day to go through some of the other policy things, but come and find me, have a chat. In real life, I'm not as dry as this. I'm much more off the cuff. But yes, come have a conversation. Let's see what we can do, and let me take away some of the learnings, the experiences, and share those in some of these rooms with the people who need to hear that, because you are the experts, we are the conduits for that conversation. I've jumped around and cut out some things, but that I think is what I thought I would bring for today. And like I said, just come and find me and have a chat. Thank you very much.